Hey everybody! So some progress with the new snow and slate tiles that I've been making. I made some bigger hills. I kind of scaled up a little bit with that, and then I made a wide open piece um, to for mostly for like stuff like this, like ruins and things like that. If I wanted to pose other things on top of them, I wanted to have a nice wide open piece, and it works really well, especially for like big things, that need a lot of room. But these, the smaller stuff, it goes in just fine with with the hills, and it's almost like it just adds a ton of playability where like I could have like some little walkways like going over things, or people could jump across or whatever, climb on things, and run up rocks and stuff. I feel like it adds like a whole nother like terrain set. And then these are supposed to replace the boards for my original Warcry starter terrain, because I never got the starter box. I just kind of pieced it out on eBay. I got, like, at the time, was really pissed off at GW, and I wanted the terrain, but I didn't think that I was going to like Warcry, and now I love Warcry. But so these are supposed to replace the boards from the original starter set, and also my corpse rack Mausoleum stuff. And so yeah, my technique changed a little bit. So that was one thing that I wanted to talk about. I think it's easier the way that I'm doing it now. So I was watching some like tutorials from like the model railroaders and how they make scenery, because we co-opt a lot of stuff. We take a lot of stuff from the model railroaders, like as gamers, like the rock molds, and then like snowy flock and stuff like that. And it's not meant for us. It's not designed like the rock molds. They're designed to make giant mountains. Like the model railroaders, they kind of want the opposite of what we want. Like, we want something that has a ton of playability that's not as tall. Like, you don't want to have to crane over things so that you can move, minis on top of it. We want something that's like, where we can see over it and easily move around it and then climb on it and stuff like that. And then the model railroaders, they want like a giant mountain that's on the side of their layout where the train, carves through the mountainside. So like their technique is really different, but I did take some things from that, from watching them. And like this, like the flock and stuff like that, it's not designed to be played on. Like, it's not designed to have little dudes running around on it, because it'll come up. So, there's things that I did with these, like I tried to make sure that all of the snow and stuff and like the dead static grass stuff is in like the cracks, so that it's not like high traffic areas. And when I'm moving stuff around, and also I wanted to kind of fill in some of the divots, so that it kind of hides spots like this where the walls, if I have pieces like this, like where the walls aren't flat on the ground. So anyways, yeah, and then the last thing was storage. So I'm working on a storage solution. I want to figure out something like these do fit in like a milk crate. Like if I put them sideways, I mean, they're on panels, so I could just hang them on my wall if I wanted to. But what I'm thinking of doing is just sort of like wrapping them in something, or like making like some sleeves that kind of protect things, and then storing them sideways in a in a milk crate or whatever, inside one of my IKEA like Kallax things. Right now they're living on top of the Kallax, and they're like my mini display boards. But yeah, let's make some more snow and slate tiles. So first off, I tried to cut out something that was actually hill-shaped instead of just gluing together a bunch of random cutoffs and making something that looks like a 2x4 shape. So it can only go uphill from there, right? And originally I had the idea that I wanted to make something really tall, a taller hill with some sharp steps up. So I had two pieces that I had cut together, and then, but I ended up making just one hill out of this. But the idea was that I was going to cut a piece out that where things would step up gradually, and then I wanted those to key together. But I ended up making one hill out of this. And the idea was to cut an incline out of it. So this was just so that I had like a smooth kind of step area to climb up onto these pieces with. But I don't think this is a necessary step. Like, I'll explain why later. So one big change, one thing that I was doing way differently was using a different kind of glue. So I switched to using a caulk gun and a tube of acrylic caulk. So these things they're like $1.50 each, and then there's a ton of glue in there. So, and I know that these are foam safe from experience. So I already had a layout idea of how I wanted this to end up. I wanted it to be an end tile piece. So I lined everything up and glued everything together before I started carving on the foam and doing gluing on rocks and doing all of that first. So that's another thing. but yeah, this stuff does take a long time to totally cure. And I was using the caulk gun and just squeezing it on. And also, I don't know if that's the best way to do this either. Like, I had a little coaster out that I was kind of letting the stuff ooze out onto, and I eventually just sort of squeezed out a bunch onto a paper towel and put it on there. And when you're not using it, just disengage the mechanism and it'll stop squeezing out of the tube slowly. So just get a pile of it and then wipe your pieces in it and then stick them together. And I think that's probably the easiest way, the best way to do this. But this stuff is 100% foam safe, and it does make a really tight bond. So I did want some places to have like sharp right angles, and then I wanted other places to have sort of gradual slopes going up. So I did cut some pieces out for the rock faces to sit in, and but as I went on, I got more and more confident with actually carving the foam and then just texturing the foam instead of using rock molds everywhere, because it can be a little bit challenging to find places for every rock mold to fit. I think that you're better off using them as big pieces and then having filler areas in between them, where you can kind of carve on the foam or make your own little features instead of just being like totally dependent on the rock molds. So here's how I finally ended up doing the glue up part. I just took the caulk gun and squeezed out a bunch of acrylic right on a piece of paper towel, and just sort of ended up like wiping the pieces in it to get glue on them, and then putting them down on the foam. But this, I knew for sure that none of these were gonna come off. Where like when I was working with the hot glue gun before, I was always scared that something was gonna come popping off later, and then it was just gonna ruin everything, all that work. So I did leave this though like all night before I went back to it and started working on it again, like texturing the foam and stuff like that, because I just, I wanted to make sure that everything was in place and just sure that it was glued down really good. But this was my idea for doing the steps up and texturing things. So I didn't want to have like chunks of cork and things like that. The cork bark that I had used earlier to make some of the other hills, because this is just, it's way easier, and I feel like you get a better looking finish if you just try and texture the foam. And I was going for kind of like a slate look anyways, like the whole board is going to be painted that black slate color, and then this part was all going to be textured with some of my texture paste stuff. So yeah, and I'm much happier with these results. I like this method way better, but I'm not sure that making the cutouts in the pieces to have the hills slope up that way is really necessary. Like if I was going to do it again, I would just carve into them to make the little steps sort of cutting up. And the Stanley knife does a really good job for like rough cuts and cutting out big chunks of foam, but of course the X-Acto is going to give a better final result and get better detail. So yeah, I just went in and tried to texture everything, and like I really, like, I can't stress this enough, it's so much nicer to just texture the foam. And I'm thinking that the next big hill thing that I try and make, I'm just gonna try and texture a bunch of foam. I'm gonna try not to use as many of the rock molds and see if I can get something that looks good just texturing the foam, and putting some spackle or something on top of that to get more texture. Then after I had done some texture stuff, I went around and tried to put in some talus. It's a geology term. It just means like rocks that have sort of fallen off of the side of a slope. And then this is just this is not shampoo. This is PVA glue. I just like to put PVA glue into like a little shampoo bottle because it makes it sort of settle down at the bottom, and it's a little bit easier to squeeze on to stuff. So I just buy big things of PVA glue, and then I put some in a shampoo bottle and then like squeeze it on something when I want to glue it. And another different thing that I tried that actually works pretty good is I tried using this golden fiber paste, And golden, they make acrylic paints, and they're supposed to be the best, the gold standard in acrylic paints. But this is it's a fiber paste. So basically it has chunks of paper, just like ground up paper. Think like Sculptamold in a jar where you just paint with it and it's ready to go. It's just little paper fibers inside medium, acrylic medium, but it does a good job for like filling in those little spots in the rocks, because I'm not using plaster all over. I'm just using some glue and like sand and stuff like that. So the acrylic caulk is the thing that's really gluing everything together. And then this is just the stuff that's kind of like, I'm using it like a gap filler in between the rocks, but it does have sort of like a rock texture. And to make some more fallen rocks down at the bottom of the slope, I had another rock mold they're these like boulder pieces, and I'm not sure that it's the most useful rock mold that I have. Like these guys, they don't look as good as the big chunks of rock, but anywhere where I'm using plaster on top of the cork, or plaster on top of plaster, or rocks, things like that, I'm just going to use super glue. Super glue will melt foam. It actually, it heats up when it does this chemical reaction thing. So it's not a chemical reaction; it's a heat reaction, and it will like burn the foam. So it doesn't smell good. It's not good. It's not healthy. But the anywhere where I'm putting plaster on top of cork, I'm just going to use super glue. But I didn't end up using as many of those rock molds. I ended up using more of these hydroponic medium stuff. And I don't know what this stuff is. Like, I'm not really sure what they sell it as. I got it for a hydroponics project a long time ago. And I think it's called Growstone, or they call it like expanded shale, or something like volcanic something. But it's a hydroponic product. But it's very, very soft and porous, and it soaks up paint and super glue, and it's very, very lightweight. But they look like real rocks, but it's an actual product. It's an actual hydroponic product. So if you want to go out of your way to get some cool looking soft rocks that you can sand down and put down on things, then go to the hydroponic store. And to sort of tie everything together, I decided that I wanted these cobblestones pieces to be on every tile, kind of like along the edges, so that when they butt up against each other, it looks like they match up. And also, when I do the flocking with the snow, I'm trying not to put it in between the cobblestones and stuff like that. I'm trying to make it sort of collect around bigger things, like it's being swept by the wind off of the cobblestones and around like big rocks and things like that. So, but yeah, I decided that I wanted my cobblestones all over the place. And if you didn't want to go to the trouble of making your own cobblestone molds like I did, you can go to Hirst Arts, and they make cobblestone molds that are like 1 inch and 1.25 inch, if you wanted to use these for like D&D or something like that. And after I had all the big chunks of plaster put down where I wanted them, I went ahead and made some of my texture slurry stuff. So what I use is equal parts gap filler, and then this is just like drywall kind of spackle filler, and then I use equal parts drywall spackle filler, PVA glue, a handful of sand, and water, and then I mix them all together, and then I get this really nice texture paste stuff, gap filler kind of slurry, and I just kind of paint that all over except for where I don't want to add texture, like on top of the rock molds and things like that. But I'm gonna put it on top of like all of the foam that I carved and things like that, and all over the ground, and that's gonna be the base for the next part. So after I have that layer down, then I'm gonna sprinkle around aquarium gravel kind of size chunks of rock, and I have finer grit rock gravel type stuff that I've sifted out, and then this is the chunkier stuff. So like there's different grades of this gravel that I have lying around, but I just get this stuff from the creek, and then sift some of it out, so I have a super fine grade and then I have a finer grade, but this is going to be my talus that's around the hill slopes. And finally, I'm going to sprinkle in some of that super fine grit sand that I've sifted out and put that on top of everything. And this is just, it's going to create that sort of like filler layer. And I don't want to put it everywhere. Like I want to kind of focus it in areas where I want to create a lot of texture, like on top of the rocks, or the stuff that I've carved. And I just want to put a little bit of texture on there. But then this is going to be that stuff that goes down in like the high traffic areas, or where I want like dirt and stuff to be. But this, this stuff is a lot easier to control. Like I can just sort of brush it off the tops of surfaces where I don't want it and put it in other places. And anywhere where I don't want that fine grit sand, like on top of my cobblestones or on top of the rock molds, I'm just gonna brush it off, and I'm using a fan blender to get it off of there. And I do the same thing with the snow later. Like I don't want the snow on top of my cobblestones or on top of the highest highlights and stuff, my rocks, and I want it to settle in the cracks. Then I'm gonna spray everything down with some really watered down PVA glue, scenery glue, and it's just like maybe 1 part glue to like 3 parts water or 4 parts water, and that's just gonna seal everything down and create a really tough layer of the sand and stuff. And then it'll also kind of self-level. So anywhere where there's like high points and stuff, then as it's drying, it'll kind of like level out and create some natural looking little land shapes. And then after everything was dry, I went around the edges and hit it with a sanding block, just to make sure that all the edges are flush when I'm using these guys together and there's no gaps. And to make the open courtyard piece, I was kind of playing around with some things. I had like one of my casts this is just, it's one of my casts that's my cobblestone mold, and it's like 8 by 8. So I just wanted to kind of break that up and then have some open pieces, or I was kind of playing with the idea of having like a different kind of tile set in the middle, but I ended up liking the look of the just the broken tile kind of look, where there was like some kind of cutouts for like mausoleums or like gravestones, things like that, if I wanted to put those in later. So yeah, just kind of broke up a big old chunk of my cobblestone molds. So eventually I wanted a layout where there was some kind of open pieces in the middle, where it looked like either there was like mausoleum cutouts or gravestones, or these, again, like these are supposed to replace my corpse rack mausoleum game boards. And since I never got those, I just got the plastic sprues. So yeah, if I want to use those, I think that these are going to be the perfect board for them. And same thing with the texture paste around these guys, but I didn't put any thick chunks of gravel. This is just the fine grit kind of stuff. But same method, you know, just using it like a gap filler and to create texture. But I want to fill in the cracks in between the cobblestones where it's obvious that where the molds are and things like that, and anywhere where it steps up abruptly from the cork up to the top of the cobblestones. And I took everything outside again and hit it with some chalky slate gray spray paint. And my painting method hasn't changed, it's still the same. There's one thing that I did that was a little bit different with the flocking later, but I'm just keeping the painting part super simple. I just want to have the deep dark kind of dark gray color of the shale, and then a mid-tone gray, and then my snow is going to be the bright white kind of highlight part. Actually on top of the rocks, this is going to be the highest highlight. So yeah, I'm working my way down from the very highest part on the model, and then working down into the cracks and stuff, and putting the most of the gray up on the highest parts, and then sort of working down from there. So the one thing that I'm doing that's slightly different with the flocking part is that I'm putting my dead static grass tufts stuff down first. And I was thinking about it, the dead grass, it lays pretty flat on the ground anyways, so it doesn't really matter that I don't have a static grass applicator, because dead grass doesn't stand up. But I didn't use that much of it anyways, mostly just using it in very low traffic areas where it could kind of grow around the bottoms of rocks and things like that, kind of keeping it away from the cobblestones for the most part, at least on this board. And then I'm putting the static grass tufts. I have some army painter tufts that they're too big for mini bases. They're a lot more suited to like terrain stuff. So I'm putting those down second, so that in case I wanted to put them like on top of the dead grass. And but definitely want to do all this stuff before I put any of the snow flock down, because I want that to kind of collect around these guys like it's blowing in the wind and catching in their blades of grass. And definitely my favorite part is putting down the snow flock. I think it's funny that I've been really resistant to making anything that had snow on it, because just for various reasons, like I thought, oh well, you know, my D&D campaign is in like a Mediterranean setting, or maybe I don't want this stuff to be permanently covered in snow, because I could use it for something else, like what if I want to use it in a jungle or whatever. But oh my god, this part is so satisfying. Putting down the snow is just like, I don't know, there's just something about it. It's just like zen. It just feels like awesome to put that last little final snow touch on there. And I love how it looks too. I think it looks awesome. But same thing with the other stuff. I'm just gonna kind of brush it around and make sure that it's where I actually want it. Like, I don't want it in high traffic areas. I want it to be in the cracks and things like that, because you know, I want it to survive being played on. And also I want my rock faces to kind of stick out like focal points, highlights, and just create more contrast and have create a little more like depth to these pieces. And then I'm gonna seal everything down with some lacquer, some varnish. But yeah, that's gonna be it, you guys, and thanks for watching. One of the things that I love about these though is that it marries together really well with all the other stuff that I've made that doesn't necessarily have snow on it. You know, it's just like a light dusting that's kind of collecting around the bottoms of things. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really happy with these. I hope you give it a try. I hope you make something similar. Alright, take care of yourselves until the next time I see you. Hey everybody, so some new progress with the snow and slate tiles.